The office was alive with activity, the kind that makes every step feel like it's part of a race. People hurried from one corner to another, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, and voices overlapping. The kind of day that could make anyone feel small, but for the janitor, it was just another Tuesday. He moved through the halls, quietly carrying a bucket and mop, unnoticed by most. It wasn't that he wanted to be invisible, but the truth was, the office was a place where people like him were rarely seen. He had worked there for years, long enough to know the patterns of the day. He knew who liked their coffee strong, who always left papers scattered on the floor, and which meetings would run over. He didn't mind the small tasks, even the occasional sneer or whispered joke behind his back. It was a job that paid the bills, kept him steady, and gave him a rhythm he had come to appreciate. On this particular morning, the CEO, a confident woman who carried herself like she owned not just the building but the city, was walking through the main hall. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor, drawing everyone's eyes. She was heading toward the rooftop helipad, where a helicopter waited, ready for a quick flight that she called a test of agility and focus. As she passed the janitor, her eyes flicked toward him, a hint of amusement flashing across her face. He was mopping near the corner, his movements steady and quiet. She stopped, a smirk forming on her lips, and raised her voice so everyone nearby could hear. "You know," she said, her tone dripping with condescension, "I wonder how someone like you ever manages to keep up in a place like this. Floors, dust, cleaning supplies, that's your world, isn't it?" The words echoed through the hall, sharp and cutting. A few employees nearby stifled smiles, some uncomfortable, but none dared to intervene. The janitor paused, mop in hand, and looked up. His expression was calm, not angry or defensive, just steady, as if he had heard words like this many times before. He didn't rise to her bait, didn't apologize, didn't flinch. He just continued his work, slowly, deliberately, as if time itself had slowed down around him. The CEO tilted her head, clearly expecting a reaction. She wanted a gasp, a flustered response, something to confirm her superiority. But the janitor's silence unsettled her. It wasn't disrespect. It was something far stranger. A quiet confidence that spoke louder than words. She laughed lightly, shaking her head. "I guess some people are just meant to stay in their place," she said, loud enough for the others to hear. "It's fine. You keep doing what you're good at." "I wouldn't expect anything more." He stopped for a moment, wiped his hands on the rag, and looked straight at her, not with anger, not with embarrassment, but with a gaze that seemed to measure her, to see past the sharp suit, the expensive shoes, and the aura of power. He said nothing, only returned to his work. But the words in his eyes were unspoken, a quiet assertion that he knew more than she imagined. The employees watched, some shifting uncomfortably, others trying not to stare. There was something magnetic about his calm. He didn't need to fight her words. His composure was a force in itself. The CEO, noticing the ripple of attention he commanded, straightened her posture. She didn't like it when someone silently challenged her presence, when their mere being unsettled the carefully curated image of authority she maintained. She turned and continued toward the helipad, but not without a lingering glance, a subtle challenge in her eyes. She wanted to see if he would follow, if he would react, if he would somehow prove her point. But he stayed behind, moving quietly among the hallways, attending to tasks that seemed ordinary but to him carried their own rhythm and satisfaction. As the day moved forward, the contrast between them became more apparent. In the boardroom, she commanded attention, her voice sharp and precise, her decisions swift and final. Outside on the shiny floors of the office, he moved with a quiet elegance, each swipe of the mop deliberate, each bucket lifted and emptied with care. It was a different kind of power, one she could not easily recognize. Lunchtime brought a brief pause. The janitor found a quiet corner, eating the sandwich he had brought from home. He watched the office around him, the meetings, the hurried steps, the ambitious chatter, and he understood it all in a way that no one seemed to notice. He understood people, their weaknesses, their strengths, their patterns, and he carried his understanding lightly, like a secret that needed no announcement. Meanwhile, the CEO had just returned from the helipad, her mood shifting from amusement to a mix of irritation and curiosity. She kept thinking about the janitor, the way he hadn't reacted, the way he had stayed calm under her words. It bothered her more than she wanted to admit. Who was he really? What was it about him that made her feel this unexpected unease? Later, the afternoon brought a flurry of visitors to the office, potential investors and media teams. Cameras flashed, questions were asked, and the CEO moved like a queen on a stage, confident, commanding. The janitor navigated through the chaos unnoticed, clearing minor spills, emptying trash bins, fixing little problems before they became visible to anyone else. His work was invisible to most, yet vital. Without him, the floor would be slippery, the office less presentable, and small crises would grow unnoticed. And he knew it. By the time the sun began to dip, painting the office in warm golden light, the CEO found herself once again thinking about the janitor. She saw him in the distance finishing his tasks, quietly humming to himself. Something about his presence seemed almost defiant, not in a loud or aggressive way, but in the sheer steadiness of his actions. He had endured her ridicule without complaint. He had stayed true to his role, yet there was an unmistakable strength in him. As the office began to empty, the janitor packed up his supplies, ready to leave. The day had been long, and yet there was a quiet satisfaction in his steps. He knew he had survived another day of scrutiny, of judgment, of assumptions made by those who never paused to look deeper, and he carried with him a secret, a story that no one in that office could imagine, a skill, a past, a life that defied their expectations. The CEO, still in her office, glanced out the window at him walking to the elevator. She felt a twinge of something she couldn't name. Curiosity? Respect? Unease? Perhaps all of it. She knew there was more to him than met the eye, something that her ridicule could never touch. And as she watched him disappear from sight, a small, unspoken question formed in her mind. Who is he really? And in that question lay the beginning of a story that neither of them could yet imagine. A story that would challenge assumptions, reveal hidden truths, and change the way they both saw the world around them. The next morning, the office hummed with a sense of anticipation. The sun poured through the glass walls, bouncing off the polished floors and casting long shadows down the hallways. Employees moved briskly, carrying coffee, files, and the endless energy that kept the building alive. Somewhere in the background, the helicopter on the rooftop waited quietly like a bird ready to take flight. The janitor arrived early, as usual, pushing his cart quietly through the main doors. He nodded to the security guard, who barely registered the gesture. It was a morning like any other, yet a small tension hung in the air, a ripple that not everyone could see. He knew something was about to happen, though he didn't fully understand what it would be. There was a feeling, subtle and persistent, that today would be different. Meanwhile, the CEO was already at the rooftop helipad, her posture upright, her mind racing with thoughts of meetings, deadlines, and a sense of control she always carried like armor. She was used to commanding attention, to being the center of every conversation, and to getting what she wanted. But something about yesterday's brief encounter with the janitor lingered in her mind. His quiet confidence, the way he had faced her ridicule without a flinch, had unsettled her more than she cared to admit. As she prepared the helicopter for a short training flight she had planned, the sound of approaching footsteps reached her. She looked down and saw the janitor walking toward the rooftop doors, his mop and bucket left behind in the hall below. He carried himself with the same calm, measured steps that had caught her attention yesterday. She raised an eyebrow, a mix of curiosity and incredulity. "You again?" she said, though there was no real accusation in her voice, more of a challenge. He stopped a few feet away, his hands in his pockets, and smiled faintly. "Good morning," he said, his voice steady, calm, without any trace of hesitation. She shook her head, partly in disbelief and partly amusement. "You're not supposed to be up here. This is restricted. I don't see your name on the visitor list," he shrugged lightly. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just wanted to see something for myself." The CEO narrowed her eyes, studying him. There was an unspoken tension between them, like two people circling each other in a silent dance. She wasn't sure why he had come up, and the air was charged with anticipation. "Fine," she said finally. "But you stay out of my way. I don't have time for distractions." He nodded, stepping aside to watch as she climbed into the cockpit. The helicopter's blades whirred to life, creating a low, vibrating hum that echoed across the rooftop. The CEO went through her pre-flight checks, moving with precision and confidence as if the machine itself responded to her presence. The janitor watched quietly, leaning against the railing, his eyes tracking every movement. After a moment of silence, he spoke. Ever flown a helicopter before? She shot him a sharp glance, half amused, half annoyed. Of course. That's why I'm up here. Are you trying to mock me? He shook his head, smiling faintly. No, just curious. It's impressive watching someone confident in what they do, but it's also dangerous if you rush it. She hesitated, sensing something unusual in his tone. There was no condescension, no arrogance, just calm observation. Dangerous, she repeated. I know what I'm doing. I don't need a lesson from a janitor. He tilted his head slightly, a spark of mischief in his eyes. Maybe, but I could teach you something you didn't expect. She raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite herself. Oh, really? And what would that be? He paused, choosing his words carefully. If you let me, I could help you fly this helicopter better. And if you trust me, I'll tell you a secret, one that might change how you see things. She laughed, a mixture of disbelief and amusement. A secret from you? This I have to hear. She gestured for him to come closer, curiosity overtaking caution. All right, let's hear it. He stepped forward, moving with an unexpected grace that made her pause. You fly this helicopter and I'll marry you, he said casually, as if it were the simplest statement in the world. She blinked, caught off guard. The words were bizarre, almost absurd, yet the way he said them left her unsettled. It wasn't a joke. It was a challenge. A line that carried confidence and quiet authority. She laughed again, louder this time, shaking her head. You've got to be kidding me. Do you realize how ridiculous that sounds? He didn't flinch. I'm serious. But first you have to trust me in the air. Can you do that? Something inside her stirred. A mix of curiosity, adrenaline, and an unshakable need to prove herself pushed her forward. Fine, she said finally, her voice firm. I'll do it. But don't expect me to follow any nonsense, he smiled faintly. No nonsense. Just focus and everything else will follow. She climbed into the cockpit, feeling the familiar tension of responsibility in her hands. The blades of the helicopter spun faster, the vibration running through the frame, the city sprawling below like a painting. He stood beside her, pointing out controls, offering calm instructions, his voice steady, almost hypnotic in its rhythm. As she followed his guidance, she felt a shift. Her confidence remained, but it was tempered by a strange sense of trust. He wasn't just watching. He was guiding, not from a place of authority, but from experience. Something about the way he spoke, the ease with which he moved through the controls made her heart race in a way she hadn't expected. It was thrilling, unnerving, and oddly comforting all at once. The flight continued, the city moving beneath them in a blur of streets, buildings, and lights. She adjusted her movements, listening to his calm directions, noticing small details she had overlooked before. The helicopter responded differently under his guidance, as if the machine itself acknowledged his quiet command. She felt a strange connection, a shared understanding that went beyond the usual hierarchy of CEO and janitor. After what felt like both an eternity and a moment, she landed the helicopter smoothly on the rooftop. Her heart was still pounding, and she was aware of every bead of sweat on her forehead. She turned to him, her eyes wide with a mix of amazement and disbelief. I didn't think I could do that, she admitted. He smiled, nodding. You could. You just needed to see things differently, to trust what you didn't expect. For a moment, they stood in silence, the hum of the helicopter fading, replaced by the distant city sounds. Something unspoken passed between them, a quiet recognition of skill, courage, and hidden strength. She realized that her assumptions about him, about what he could do, had been completely wrong. She laughed softly, shaking her head. All right, I'll give you that. I never would have guessed. He tilted his head, a faint glimmer in his eyes. And that's why you should never judge someone by what you see on the surface. Her amusement shifted into admiration, tempered by a growing curiosity. Who was this man, really? What experiences had shaped him, giving him a confidence and knowledge that she could never have imagined? She felt a strange pull, a desire to know more, to see what other surprises might be hidden beneath his calm exterior. As they walked off the rooftop, the sun dipping lower on the horizon, the air carried a subtle tension, a sense of anticipation for what might come next. The janitor had left her speechless, not with words, but with action, skill, and a quiet defiance of expectation. She realized that her world, the one she had always controlled, was only a fraction of the bigger picture he seemed to understand instinctively. She glanced at him again, this time without the arrogance, without the challenge, Just curiosity, a sense of respect, and an unspoken question lingering in her mind. Who is he really? And what other secrets hidden in plain sight were waiting to be revealed? The next day, the office felt different, though nothing had changed. The sun streamed through the glass walls, casting bright reflections on the shiny floors. Employees moved about, talking, typing, and running errands, yet there was an unspoken energy lingering in the air, as if everyone sensed something unusual. The janitor arrived early, pushing his cart quietly, his movements familiar and methodical. He smiled at the few early arrivals, nodding in recognition, and went about his work, but his mind was elsewhere, replaying the events of the helicopter ride, the way the CEO had reacted, and the spark of curiosity he had seen in her eyes. Meanwhile, the CEO was in her office, pacing back and forth, her mind restless. She couldn't stop thinking about the janitor, the way he had guided her through the helicopter controls, and the sense of calm authority he had carried. It was more than skill. It was an understanding of the world, a quiet power that she had never encountered before. Her pride wrestled with her curiosity, but in the end, curiosity won. She wanted to know more, to see what made him so different from everyone else she had ever met. Later in the morning, the janitor found himself summoned to the rooftop again. The helicopter was waiting, its blades still, silent in the morning light. He approached cautiously, unsure of what was expected this time. The CEO was already there, standing beside the aircraft with a clipboard in hand, her expression unreadable. When she saw him, she waved him over without a word, a silent invitation that carried more weight than any sentence could. He stepped closer, keeping his distance until she acknowledged him. "You're back," she said simply. Her tone was different from yesterday, less condescending, more curious. "I want to try something. I need your guidance again." He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Guidance?" he asked. "Are you sure you're ready?" She nodded, a serious look on her face. "I want to learn, not just fly. I want to understand. Can you help me?" He studied her for a moment, noticing the shift in her demeanor. The arrogance and challenge that had been there before had softened, replaced by something earnest. "All right," he said finally. "But you have to follow my instructions carefully. Flying isn't just about the machine. It's about control, focus, and trust." She climbed into the cockpit, her hands gripping the controls, her eyes fixed on the horizon. He stood beside her, explaining each instrument, the subtle movements of the sticks, the delicate balance required to maneuver the helicopter safely. His voice was calm, steady, like the quiet of a lake before dawn. She listened intently, absorbing every word, every subtle hint he offered. As they lifted off the ground, the city below stretched out like a vast, intricate puzzle. Streets wound through neighborhoods, buildings rose like monuments, and people moved like tiny figures in a giant painting. She felt the hum of the engine, the vibration through the floor, and a strange exhilaration that mixed fear and excitement. The janitor's presence beside her was reassuring, grounding her in a way that no other pilot had ever managed. He guided her hand, adjusted her posture, and whispered instructions with a precision that made every movement count. Hours passed in a blur of practice, the helicopter weaving through the air with grace. Each maneuver brought a new level of understanding, and with every moment she realized the depth of his knowledge. He wasn't just skilled in flying, he had a way of seeing patterns, anticipating movements, and remaining calm in the face of complexity. It was as if the helicopter, the city, and the wind itself listened to him, obeyed him. At one point he leaned over slightly and said, "You're doing better than you think. But you need to feel the machine, not just control it. Listen to it, trust yourself." She nodded, her heart pounding, her palms sweating, yet she felt a growing confidence with each instruction. Something about the way he spoke, the quiet authority, the absence of ego made her want to trust him completely. For the first time, she realized that learning wasn't about proving herself. It was about opening herself to guidance, even from someone she had underestimated. As the sun began to lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they landed smoothly on a quiet rooftop far from the busy streets. The helicopter hummed softly, its engines cooling, and she stepped out feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. She turned to him, her expression unreadable, yet her eyes betrayed her astonishment. "I never imagined I could do that," she admitted softly. He smiled, a faint, knowing smile. "You could. You just needed someone to help you see what you didn't expect. Flying is like life in that way. It's not just about control, it's about trust, timing, and understanding. She looked at him closely, curiosity growing stronger. And you? You've been so calm, so sure. Where did you learn all this? You never mentioned it before. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Some things are better shown than said. Some skills are hidden, not because they're secrets, but because they don't need to be known until the right moment. She felt a strange respect building inside her, mingled with a hint of awe. Here was a man she had thought she understood, someone she had assumed she knew. Yet he had layers she couldn't even begin to imagine. He had turned her assumptions upside down, not with confrontation, but with action, skill, and quiet confidence. They walked along the rooftop in silence for a few moments, the city stretching endlessly below them. The air was warm, carrying the scent of asphalt, distant traffic, and the faint hum of the helicopter still cooling behind them. She glanced at him, noticing the calm in his posture, the quiet strength in his movements, and the subtle assurance in his gaze. It was magnetic, and she realized she had underestimated him completely. "I think I understand a little more now," she said finally, her voice thoughtful, not just about flying, but about how much I assume about people, how quickly I judge. He nodded as if he had expected her to say exactly that. We all do it. We see what we expect to see and ignore what we don't. But sometimes someone surprises us. Sometimes the unexpected shows us something more important than we could imagine. She smiled faintly, a mixture of humility and amazement. The janitor had shown her a different perspective, one that wasn't about status, power, or appearances. It was about skill, trust, and understanding, hidden beneath a calm exterior that had seemed ordinary to everyone else. As they prepared to leave the rooftop, she felt a quiet shift inside her. The day's events had changed something fundamental, not just about her understanding of him, but about her understanding of herself. She realized that strength, skill, and confidence weren't always obvious. Sometimes they were quiet, hidden, and revealed only when the moment demanded it. The janitor watched her, a faint smile on his lips. He didn't need to speak. The lessons of the day had been learned in the flight, in the trust, and in the quiet moments that carried more weight than words. And as they walked back toward the elevator, the city glowing in the evening light, she knew this was only the beginning. There was more to discover, more to learn, and more surprises waiting, hidden just beneath the surface of ordinary life. The following week, the office carried on with its usual pace, but a quiet change had settled over the floors. People moved about with their usual routines, yet those who passed the janitor noticed a subtle shift in his presence. He moved with the same calm, precise motions, yet there was a faint confidence in his step, a quiet energy that seemed to ripple out without him needing to say a word. The CEO, too, carried herself differently. Her interactions were sharper, yet softer somehow, a new understanding in the way she viewed the world around her. She found herself glancing in his direction more than she realized. Not out of curiosity or judgment, but from genuine interest. She wanted to see him in action, to understand the rhythm of his day and perhaps to learn from it. She had discovered that skill, calmness, and quiet power were not always found in offices filled with polished furniture and lofty titles. Sometimes they were found in the most unexpected places. One afternoon, she requested him to meet her on the rooftop again. The helicopter awaited, its metallic surface catching the sun as it shimmered. The janitor approached cautiously, his usual calm demeanor in place, yet he could sense a different tone in her request. She had stopped approaching him with arrogance or challenge. This time there was curiosity, respect, and an unspoken acknowledgement of the events that had passed. "Good afternoon," she said, her voice steady, her eyes meeting his. "I want to apologize for yesterday, for my words and attitude. I spoke without understanding, and it was wrong." He blinked, taken aback for a moment. He had not expected this level of humility, and yet he appreciated it. "Thank you," he replied simply. "It means a lot. But no hard feelings. Everyone has their moments." The CEO nodded and gestured to the helicopter. "I want you to guide me again. Today I want to learn more than just flying. I want to understand, to see how you do things, and maybe I can do better too." He smiled faintly. "All right. But today we'll go deeper. Flying isn't just about the machine. It's about observation, anticipation, and connection. Are you ready for that?" She took a deep breath and nodded. "I am." The engines hummed to life as she climbed into the cockpit, her hands gripping the controls, her eyes focused. The janitor stood beside her, guiding her through each step, explaining the subtle nuances of the instruments, the importance of balance, the anticipation of shifts in wind and movement. His voice was calm, steady, and filled with a quiet authority that made her feel both challenged and reassured. As they lifted off, the city stretched beneath them, sprawling and alive. Streets, buildings, and parks appeared like an intricate puzzle, each piece requiring attention and care. She followed his guidance carefully, absorbing his instructions, feeling the subtle differences in how the helicopter responded to her touch. He watched her closely, noting the precision and adjustments she made, offering gentle corrections and encouragement. Hours passed in a blend of focus and silent understanding. Each maneuver became smoother, more intuitive, and she began to feel the connection not just with the helicopter but with him. He wasn't just a guide. He was a teacher, showing her how to trust the process, trust herself, and see beyond the obvious. At one point, he leaned slightly closer and said, "You're doing better than you think. Flying is like life. You can control some things, adapt to others, but you have to trust the process. Trust yourself and sometimes trust others." She nodded, feeling the weight of his words sink in. It wasn't just about flying. It was about understanding the subtle forces that shaped her life, the judgments she had made, the assumptions that had limited her vision. She realized that she had learned more than just piloting a helicopter. She had learned about patience, perspective, and humility. After a long session, they landed smoothly on a quiet rooftop, the sun casting long shadows and bathing the city in a warm glow. She stepped out, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration, and looked at him. "I think I'm beginning to understand," she said softly. "Not just about flying, but about so much else. About assumptions, about patience, and about respect." He smiled, a faint, knowing smile. "That's good. Sometimes it takes a different perspective to see what we've been missing, and sometimes the most valuable lessons come from unexpected places." She nodded thoughtfully, a sense of calm settling over her. The helicopter sat behind them, silent now. Yet it had become more than a machine. It had become a symbol of trust, guidance, and the unexpected wisdom that came from seeing beyond the surface. They walked along the rooftop in silence, each lost in their thoughts. The city stretched endlessly below, a vast landscape filled with possibilities. She glanced at him, noting the quiet strength in his posture, the calm assurance in his movements, and the subtle confidence that seemed to radiate from him. It was a presence that demanded respect without needing to assert it, a rare and remarkable quality. "I never realized how much I assumed about people," she said finally, her voice thoughtful. "I judged too quickly based on appearances and titles. You've shown me something I didn't expect," he nodded. "We all do it. It's easy to see the surface and miss what's beneath. But once you notice, once you see, the world opens up in ways you didn't imagine." Her expression softened, a mixture of humility and respect. She realized that the janitor had not only guided her through flying, but had guided her through understanding herself. His quiet confidence, his hidden skills, and his patience had left a mark she would never forget. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden light over the city, they prepared to leave the rooftop. The journey of the day had changed something fundamental. She understood now that strength, skill, and wisdom weren't always visible. Sometimes they were hidden, revealed only through patience, observation, and trust. The janitor watched her, a faint smile on his lips. He didn't need to speak. The lessons had been learned in action, in trust, and in quiet moments that carried more weight than words. And as they walked back toward the elevator, the city glowing around them, she knew that this experience had reshaped not just her understanding of him, but her understanding of the world itself. The days that followed were quiet but full of subtle change. The office continued its usual pace with the constant hum of activity and the occasional clatter of keyboards, phones ringing, and soft footsteps on polished floors. Yet for those who observed closely, a difference could be seen. The janitor moved with his usual calm, steady rhythm, but now there was a quiet pride in his work. He no longer felt the need to shrink into the background. He had proven to himself and to others that his skill and experience were valuable even if invisible to most. The CEO, too, had changed. She walked through the office with a softer awareness, noticing small details that had once escaped her attention. She observed the janitor moving through the hallways, emptying trash bins, adjusting misplaced papers, and quietly fixing problems before anyone else could see them. She realized that the office ran smoother, not because of meetings or deadlines, but because of the silent efforts of people like him. A newfound respect settled in her heart, one that was deeper than admiration for skill. It was an understanding of dedication and unseen strength. One late afternoon, she requested him to meet her again on the rooftop. The helicopter stood waiting, its blades still, reflecting the golden hues of the setting sun. The janitor approached, a faint curiosity sparking in his calm eyes. He had begun to anticipate these invitations, sensing that each encounter carried more than just lessons in flying. Today he felt would be different. She greeted him with a simple nod, her voice steady yet warmer than before. "I want to thank you," she said, "for guiding me, for your patience, and for showing me something I didn't expect. I've realized how much I've been missing by judging too quickly." He smiled faintly, appreciating her sincerity. "Everyone has assumptions," he replied. "It's easy to see what we expect to see and overlook what's hidden. But once we notice, we start to understand more. That understanding changes everything." She glanced at the helicopter, then back at him, her eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. "I want to take one more flight with you guiding me. Not to prove anything, but to truly learn. Are you willing?" He nodded, stepping aside. "Of course. But this time we'll go further. Flying isn't just about control. It's about connection. Connection with the machine, with the environment, and sometimes with the person guiding you." She climbed into the cockpit, her hands steady on the controls, and he stood beside her, guiding her movements and adjusting her posture. The helicopter lifted off the rooftop smoothly, the city stretching endlessly below them. Streets and buildings glimmered in the late sunlight, parks and rivers reflecting the sky, and she felt the thrill of flight combined with the calm assurance of his presence beside her. Throughout the flight, he explained subtle movements, the balance required to navigate wind shifts, and how to anticipate the helicopter's reactions. She listened, absorbing not just the instructions but the philosophy behind them: patience, observation, and trust. He encouraged her, offered gentle corrections, and praised her instincts. With every passing moment, she felt more capable and more attuned to the world around her. As the sun sank lower, they hovered over the city, the streets glowing with the first lights of evening. She realized that the flight was no longer just about mastering a machine. It was about understanding herself, understanding the quiet power of skill, and seeing the value in patience and hidden strength. She turned to him, eyes wide with a mix of awe and gratitude. "I can see now," she said softly, "why you never needed to prove anything. Your strength is quiet, and it speaks louder than words." He looked at her calmly, his gaze steady. "Strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, persistent, and revealed only when it matters. You've learned something important today, not just about flying, but about perspective." She nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest she hadn't expected. "And I've learned to respect people in ways I never did before. To notice what's hidden, and to appreciate it." They landed smoothly on a quiet rooftop, the helicopter's engines cooling in the evening air. The city stretched endlessly below them, a mosaic of lights, streets, and buildings. They stood together for a few moments, sharing a silence that was comfortable, meaningful, and full of unspoken understanding. She turned to him, a faint smile on her lips. "I have to admit something," she said. "Your words yesterday about marrying if I flew this helicopter. I didn't understand at the time, but now I see it differently. It wasn't about the words, it was about trust, skill, and connection." "I understand why you said it," he nodded, his expression calm. "Exactly. Words can carry meaning beyond their surface. They can challenge us, make us reflect, and reveal things we didn't notice before." That moment wasn't about marriage. It was about trust and belief in what seemed impossible. She laughed softly, shaking her head. "I never expected to learn so much from someone I thought I knew nothing about. You've completely changed how I see the world, and people." He smiled faintly, a quiet acknowledgement of her words. "It's all about perspective. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you respect it, the world feels different." They walked along the rooftop, the warm evening air carrying the sounds of the city below. She felt lighter, freer, and more aware. The lessons of the helicopter, the trust and the quiet strength of the janitor had left a lasting impression. She realized that the office, the building, and even the city were full of hidden layers, waiting to be discovered by those willing to observe and learn. As the evening deepened, they prepared to leave the rooftop. The helicopter, now silent, stood as a symbol of the journey they had shared, a reminder of trust, skill, and unexpected lessons. She looked at him one last time, a mix of admiration, respect, and gratitude in her eyes. He returned her gaze, calm, confident, and quietly reassuring. The journey had begun with ridicule, misunderstanding, and assumptions, but it ended with respect, understanding, and a shared acknowledgement of hidden strength. The CEO had learned humility, perspective, and the importance of seeing beyond appearances. The janitor had revealed not just his skill, but his quiet authority, patience, and wisdom, leaving a mark that could not be ignored. As they descended the elevator back to the office, the city lights twinkling outside, she carried with her a newfound understanding. She knew that the lessons she had learned were not just about flying, but about life, trust, and the extraordinary strength hidden in ordinary people. And in that understanding, she felt a sense of connection and respect that would stay with her forever. Days passed, and the city seemed to pulse with its usual energy, yet the office felt subtly transformed. The CEO walked through the hallways with a lighter step, her eyes sharper, noticing details she once ignored. The janitor moved with his calm precision, his presence now observed with quiet respect by many. Something had shifted between them, an unspoken connection that neither title nor position could define. It was early morning when the CEO asked him to meet on the rooftop again. She had been thinking a lot about the lessons he had taught her, not only about flying, but about patience, perspective, and trust. She realized there was more to learn, more hidden layers to uncover, and she wanted guidance once again. The janitor approached, as always, steady and composed, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Good morning," she greeted him. "I know it's early, but I want to do another session. I feel there's more I can understand. Not just about flying, but about, well, everything that matters when you guide someone." He nodded thoughtfully. "Morning. You've been paying attention. That's the first step. Flying isn't just about the helicopter. It's about control, observation, and understanding how choices affect outcomes. That applies to life too." She smiled, the weight of understanding settling in. "Then let's get started. I want to learn more." The helicopter blades hummed to life, their vibration running through the floor of the rooftop. She climbed into the cockpit, her hands finding the controls more comfortably now, her mind focused and open. He stood beside her, guiding her with calm, measured instructions. Each adjustment, each subtle correction became easier. She could feel the rhythm of the helicopter, its response to wind and movement, and the quiet confidence in him gave her courage. As they rose into the sky, the city stretched endlessly below them, alive with movement and light. Streets wound like ribbons, buildings reached toward the clouds, and people moved like ants busy with their lives. She felt exhilaration and serenity at the same time, the kind of calm that only comes from trust and understanding. He pointed out subtle changes in wind patterns, suggested gentle shifts, and spoke of anticipation and timing, his voice steady and assuring. Hours passed, yet time seemed to stretch and fold. She followed his guidance, becoming more precise, more confident. He challenged her with maneuvers she had never tried, testing her focus and patience. She responded, sometimes hesitating, sometimes executing perfectly, always learning. Each challenge was not just about the machine, but about understanding herself, her limitations, and her ability to adapt. At one point, he leaned closer, his voice calm but firm. "Flying teaches more than control. It teaches patience, observation, and trust. You have to see things as they are, not as you expect them to be. That's true in life as well." She nodded, her thoughts racing. He was right. The lessons went beyond the helicopter. She reflected on past moments of pride, moments when she had judged others too quickly or assumed she knew everything. Those assumptions had been her limitations, holding her back from seeing what was truly possible. He guided her through complex turns and altitude adjustments, and she began to feel a connection, not just with the helicopter, but with him. His calm, steady presence made her aware of subtle things she had ignored before. The shifting balance of the controls, the gentle resistance of the air, the precision required to maintain perfect flight. It wasn't just skill. It was a philosophy of life manifested through movement, patience, and observation. As the sun began to descend, painting the sky in golds and pinks, They hovered over the city, taking in the view. She turned to him, her eyes reflecting the evening light. "I feel like I understand more now," she said softly. "Not just about flying, but about trust, patience, and seeing what's hidden. It's like I'm learning to see the world differently." He nodded, a faint smile on his lips. "That's the point. Once you notice the details, once you trust, you start to see beyond the surface. Life has layers, just like the city below us. Observing, understanding, and adapting, that's how you navigate both the skies and life itself." They landed smoothly on a quiet rooftop, the city lights beginning to flicker on. She stepped out, feeling a strange combination of exhaustion and exhilaration. The lessons were sinking in, not just in her mind but in her perspective. She realized that growth was quiet, cumulative, and revealed itself gradually. Just like flying, life required patience, focus, and trust. As they walked along the rooftop, the air cooling around them, she spoke again. "I think I've finally started to understand what you've been showing me. It's not just about skill, it's about presence, observation, and patience. And humility. You've shown me how much I can learn if I pay attention." He looked at her calmly, his expression serene. Humility is often the key to understanding. Once you drop the need to prove yourself, you open space to see clearly, to learn and to grow. The rest follows naturally. She nodded, feeling the weight and truth of his words. It was a lesson she had not expected to receive from someone she had once dismissed. She felt gratitude, respect, and a quiet connection that went beyond conversation, beyond instruction. It was an understanding born of shared experience, trust, and observation. As they prepared to leave the rooftop, she took a final look at the city stretching below. The streets, buildings, and lights seemed alive in a new way. She felt a sense of clarity, a vision sharpened not by status or power but by experience, guidance, and quiet mentorship. She understood now that the greatest lessons often come from those we least expect, and the most valuable wisdom is sometimes hidden in plain sight. The janitor watched her with a faint, approving smile. He had guided her not just through flight but through a subtle transformation in perception. He didn't need praise or acknowledgement. The results spoke for themselves. She had seen, learned, and changed. That was enough. As they descended the elevator back to the office, she reflected on the journey. From ridicule and assumptions to trust and respect, the path had been unexpected, challenging, and transformative. She had learned to see beyond appearances, to value quiet strength, and to trust in patience and observation. The city outside the windows seemed different, alive with possibilities she had not noticed before. The janitor continued his work as usual, his quiet presence a reminder that skill and wisdom often go unnoticed until the right moment. The CEO carried a newfound respect and awareness, not only for him but for the hidden layers of the world around her. Both had changed, though in different ways. One had revealed strength and guidance quietly. The other had learned to observe, trust, and grow. It was a day that marked another step in a shared journey, one that had started with judgment and ridicule but had blossomed into understanding, respect, and an unspoken connection. The lessons of patience, observation, and trust would stay with them both, quietly shaping the way they saw each other and the world. The helicopter, now silent, stood as a symbol of this journey, a reminder that the extraordinary can often be found in the most unexpected places, waiting for those willing to notice and learn.